And did you say you sent Renee? Let's go.
All right. Well, good morning. It's Wednesday and it's November. We have 2 months left in this year. Can
Blowing
you
by.
believe that?
I can't believe it. We're in November already.
We got elections in 1 week. We got Thanksgiving. We got Christmas, and we're in 2023.
Yeah. The rollout is real. Two
Wow.
weeks. 2 weeks to BizCon.
Yes. And since you brought that up real quick, we will be out at BizCon in 2 weeks, and we're going to broadcast from there. And
Yes.
those who have not seen this, I'm telling you, get ready for a new world, a different world.
Most
So,
definitely. Nobody really knows, but the industry has supporters all the way across the board, and we're all just trying to find our way. But I mean, it's tremendous. Year number 2. I can't wait.
well, it's one of those things that not only the depth of everything that's involved with it, it's almost one of those that if your mind can think of what can do with cannabis and hemp, it's being done.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, my first year at BizCon, I was totally blown away. They did it in the most perfect city
Yes.
and state that can possibly host it. A city and state that literally is their own maverick. They are wild. They want to do it their way, and they shall do it their way. They got laws that is nowhere else in other states. So Las Vegas, Nevada, here we come.
Well, and that's the thing, and I don't have that note pulled up, but I saw something the other day where they are changing the pharmaceutical end of it in that state, and they're rescheduling it themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're not playing no games out there. I really want to dig into that even more just to see one, how are they doing it? What's the difference in Las Vegas? Not necessarily Las Vegas, but Nevada itself, that state has created their own exception to the rule. They challenge the Fed on rules and regulations that other states don't. So we definitely need to dig deep, dive more into that, so that way we can let our listeners know. But if anybody is in the state of Nevada who can bring us up to speed, show us the light, let us know what's going on in that state, we would greatly appreciate it. So just want to put that out there.
Absolutely. And anybody that's listening to it that is in Nevada or knows somebody, reach out to us and we'll give, of course, again, where to connect with us because we will be out there November 15th to the 18th. And we would love to set up some meetings to discuss it and get them on the show.
Absolutely. We definitely want to create the space for people to get their platform out there, and then also just industry secrets and shedding the light on what's really truly going on in the industry. We got to continue to build and develop it. We have to continue to educate ourselves, but also at the same time, we got to speak it. We have to speak it into existence so that way we can move further along in the industry to go where we want to go and do as we want to do.
Absolutely. And like we said, we're 1 week away from the election. So we thought it was a great time to kind of get caught up on some of those things.
Yeah.
Right.
What you got, Nate?
Well, like we talked a couple of weeks ago about the pardon that Biden has done, and we kind of broke that down, which we know it's, here's that keyword, incremental,
Right.
not what we wanted. But the bright side is by doing so, he's directed the Secretary of Health and Human Service and the U.S. Attorney General to review how it's categorized under federal law.
It needs to be looked at deeply. When you look at the opioids that is legal,
Mm-hmm.
they're legal. It can be prescribed by medical doctors, and that's the same thing that can happen with cannabis. There's no reason why it should be a Schedule 1 drug. There's no reason why it should continue to hurt people who actually need it, who can actually be treated for different ailments. The plant itself can cure so many different ailments that people live through on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And we've seen it. You've seen it in your own life. You've got family members,
Yes,
that have done these type of things to help them, how important it is.
yes. And you know the thing is that all of the myths that are out there, it's just kind of weird how people will put a spin on things and they'll continue to go into it. And I think we talked a little bit about that with Chris last week. Um, and the most important thing is how you was raised, how you was reared. What do you truly believe? What do you really know? How have you educated yourself in those areas for you to stand strong, 10 feet, 10 toes down, 2 feet down on the concerns and issues that your public, that your society, that your community has said is wrong. And the thing about it is, well, where did those narratives come from? Did it come from Big Pharma? Did it come from the government who created all the laws and all the regulations? So those are the things, those are the questions that we need to find out, and we need to go deeper into that. And we definitely would like anyone who has knowledge in that area to shed some light and help us find the answer.
Absolutely. And yeah, touch a point, like we said, we're a week away from the election.
Yeah.
And people need to treat cannabis and hemp the same way we do with the election. Don't listen to what your friends are saying, your neighbors, all these other people. Do your research, learn and educate yourself to make your proper educated choice.
Right.
Because you're going to get the influence with other people going, it's whatever it is, the stigma's out there, it's low income, it's this, that's what you're going to hear. But we've seen the research. Right. We've seen how it helps so many people. Why do you think, for example, someone like Mike Tyson is heavily involved in this business?
Heavily. Somebody who's taken a lot of headshots, a person who has, in my outlook of boxing itself, he's probably suffered CTE or suffering from it,
Right.
which could be a treatment for it. And as you look at the number of NFL players that are getting into the industry and supporting the industry, we have to go back and look at it. And we talk about how they have taken off the random drug testings off of this season, and allowing the players to responsibly consume and treat themselves during the season. Though the issue is, if you get offline, if you don't walk that straight line that they're asking you to walk, you can be tested and you could be subjected to a suspension for the season.
Absolutely. And like, for example, I'm looking this up now because I just thought about it. We've got the World Cup starting in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how their stance is, which I don't know that off the top of my head, but you got to think people getting kicked in the head, doing the headers on these passes. They won't allow children under a certain age to do a header in soccer because they're afraid of the long-term effects.
No, absolutely. You can look at sports so many different ways. The exposure of youth itself. You got to look at chronic pain as a potential issue in small children. So I think that the development of their bodies is on the line. You got to look at it one or two ways. Some you have early bloomers, and then you have your late bloomers. And you just have to look at what you expose and subject their body to under those circumstances.
Right, because this one I just pulled up, it says CBD is no longer prohibited. However, a compound other than CBD, like cannabis, marijuana, hashish, is still prohibited. Even CBD that contains THC, it has to be 0.3 and lower for FIFA to allow it.
Absolutely. That is the standard across the board. That is an international standard as well. So I truly understand that for whoever came up with that number, they made that number the standard across the board, not only just in the United States, but in China, Canada, and other nations abroad. Some nations, of course, it's zero tolerance and not even allowed. But 0.03 is definitely the standard across the board that you can consume without having the psychoactive properties from when you take it.
Right. And another thing on what we had mentioned about Biden, he's saying that the federal and state marijuana laws should be loosened, but there should be limitations on trafficking, marketing, and underage sales. And like you said about everybody developing different. We've got to make sure as a community that underage sales is not allowed.
Right. Yeah, that's I think honestly, Nate, what we have to continue to do is we got to educate the people where we need to be, how we need to be, on all of those circumstances. Because if we don't get the word out and the right word out of how to use, when to use, how you can consume safely, uh, responsibly, what you need to do, how you need to be educated, we have to make sure that we get the message out.
Well, for example, as we stated, it is still classified as a Schedule 1 drug, and that's alongside with heroin, LSD, and those are carrying the same criminal penalties for that possession. Now,
Yeah.
Idaho, Kansas, and Nebraska are the only states that have not implemented any kind of public use program at this time, either medical or recreational.
Yeah, there's some states that are behind, and we have to definitely look further and deeper into the politicians of what we have to do is push. I think one of the things that Chris did about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago at the Capitol, that they actually made a political push on the government to start looking at the industry and listening to what we're saying.
Absolutely. Remember, your power as the people is in the voting, and not just when you vote, but afterwards, making sure, like they did at the White House, you said during this time you're going to keep your promise. Where is it? Hold them accountable. We have to.
No, it's definitely true about that. And the one thing that I wanted to say, I did vote early this year, and I actually voted 2 weeks ago. And I definitely was going to put something up today, just encouraging people to go out and vote and do their part. The one thing that I can say in voting this year, opposed to when I voted last year, this year I was not limited to who I can actually vote for. I was able to vote for candidates that I truly felt and believe are stronger. My political party and my political beliefs, sometimes it is contrary. It does not reflect the leadership that I feel that is worthy of holding that position in office. Sometimes you do have to concede to the other party. Not saying that I want to go back and forth between the lines and so forth, but you do have to look at the most solid, most qualified and bona fide candidate. You got to look at the leadership values and the virtues that they can put in place during the election. And those are the things that compel me to vote the way that I do. There are times where you just don't have the right person in office. As speaking from the foundation, I can't really talk about candidates. I would love to, but me personally, I vote on the Republican side, but I did not do that across the board in this election. And that's all that I can really say for the purposes of this recording right now. But for the most part, me as an individual, this election coming up, definitely it's important that everybody do vote. It is going to go down to the wire.
Well, and one of the big points, like you said, and that's what's so important, is people need to understand collectively that if you are registered under one party, you don't have to vote entirely for that party. You're right, and you're privileged, so to speak. And what the beauty of our system is that you choose the candidate that fits what you believe, what you side with the most. You can vote across the whole entire board. So that's why I always say do your education and make the proper education for yourself and by yourself. And if you do that, you did what you should have done.
Absolutely. And under the unfortunately, and I definitely need to look further into it, but in the last election that I voted, I was only able to vote for my party particularly. And I can't say that everybody in my party should have had that vote. There are some people who, for the purpose of whatever their agenda is, there should not be an agenda in politics other than to help the people and do the rightmost thing for that community and for that society at large, that are hinging on your leadership and being vocal. That those are the things that are really important when you vote for a candidate. I don't want a person who I have to go back and call them out on. Well, hey, you said this and you didn't follow up on it, or you didn't stand down or stay true to what you were speaking. What you did was you did what you needed to actually get the vote. We want to hold you accountable, and that's how it should be.
Absolutely. 100% correct and agree with that. That's how our voice as people are, because remember, these officials do work for us.
That's true. And the tax paying money that they generate just from the taxes, they tax you whether you're an employer, they tax you whether you're an employee, they tax you on the goods that you actually sell, they tax you on the goods that you buy. So even when you get licensed for the business, they tax you for the inventories that you actually own as well. So it's a tax on everything, and that's a lot of money. And the appropriations of those money all falls back to the leadership that's in place and what they really truly believe in.
There's only one that I don't think there's a tax yet, and I hope that they don't find a way to do it. I don't believe there's a breathing tax yet.
Whew.
However, there
Can't
is on
hold my
everything
breath.
else.
I can't hold a breath. I can't hold my breath for the rest of my life. So
Nope.
that don't happen.
Nope. But 5 states with legal provision are on the midterm ballot, which of course you can vote early.
Okay.
And we've got, again, the vote coming: Arkansas, Maryland, Missouri, North Dakota, and South Dakota are the 5. And we'll go into those a little bit more, but those are the 5 that currently have it on the ballot right now. Arkansas,
Well,
for example.
okay.
Yeah, their voters are presented with Arkansas issue 4 in the midterm, which is the legalization initiative. And that would make it legal for people 21 and up to possess up to 1 ounce for personal use.
Okay.
But the bright side there is that would eliminate tax on medical while increasing tax on the recreational side. The tax would be fund law enforcement and state drug court programs.
Yeah, it sounds like the law enforcement is going to be a little bit more overzealous because you got to look at the appropriation of funds. How much money is put into the endowment for law enforcement based off of dealing with drugs itself, and marijuana is a Schedule 1. So when they have their task force in place to look for these particular items in particular, how hard are they going to go at the individuals? Because there should be one a decrim in place, and there have been so many people that's been incarcerated and convicted of possession of cannabis or marijuana, not with the intent to distribute, but just period. The minimum amount, depending on what city or state that it's in, it varies as far as the amount possession-wise that you can actually have. Some is an ounce, some is 2 ounce, 3 ounce. But for the most part, what we have to look at is Arkansas, which is the first time that we really had a discussion about it. It says here about $205 million has been spent on medical marijuana this year, and that's according to Axios. And currently up to 40 licensed dispensaries operate in Arkansas. So definitely big shout outs and big ups to Arkansas. They're definitely making gains. I mean, they're right at $250 million in business. And we're talking about 9-10 months into the year when they compile these numbers. So it's a good number. That means that there's growth in the growth there, and legally they can grow even more in leaps and bounds by legalizing it across the board. They'll see definitely consumption will go up on the medical side and on the recreational side.
Absolutely. And in 2021, you had just over 3 million people in the population in Arkansas. And with that, 92,000 of them have medical cards currently.
That's
3 million, just the medical end, and that's where your 205 came from.
Yeah, that's less than 1%. That's less than 1%. We got to definitely work on those numbers. People need to know, and I think we definitely have to look into that a little bit more so we can definitely discuss it even further.
Absolutely. And then going over to Maryland, for example, they've had the medical end of their law since 2013. But now the voters are going to have their option on their voice of whether or not to allow it for recreational use.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, because their Maryland question 4 referred to the legalization amendment, which would make it again legal for those 21 and up beginning in July of next year. And it would allow the individuals convicted of crimes to petition to get them expunged from their criminal records. Individuals serving those sentences will be allowed to petition for resentencing and release.
Okay.
And on that, you found a poll that 73% of the registered voters in Maryland are in favor of it. Now, I like this because we're taking what Biden said a step further. We're allowing them not to only get it expunged from their criminal records for those people with trying to get apartments, housing, work, that can be cleared, but also you're letting those who have a prison sentence actually now be able to get it reevaluated, which I think is taking what Biden said a step further, because remember we said he was pardoning those at 0.3 and lower.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know the number, but we're talking what, maybe 3-4% of all people that have a charge against them are actually going to be able to have it fixed underneath Biden's proposal.
Let's hope he keeps his word on that one. I know a little bit about Maryland. I have friends that are in that demographics, and they normally did what's called a gifting. Of they had a gifting suite where it's like a goods in exchange, and they've been having some issues with that law, especially for the last year. A lot of the shops have been shut down, and it's just because of dangerous situations are created when they don't have the protection from local government. People can just run up in the place, and we don't want to see anybody be subjected to any type of violence. But the exposure of cannabis itself in the marketplace, literally, it can compete with Big Pharma if it was totally legal. But because a large portion of it is illegal, it cannot compete with Big Pharma, and will not be allowed to until we have those politicians in those states continue to talk and to continue to discuss what's necessary to further educate the people in that area, but also create the solutions and the opportunity for employment in those areas as well.
Right. And like we talked about last week in DC, for example, you are allowed to possess it, but you can't exchange money for it. So they're doing the same thing like you're talking about in Maryland, where it is a gifted good. So you buy X, here is our gift for you.
Yeah. Wow, that is such a gray area there, but you gotta love it. I mean, it's somebody there was really creative when they came with that. Very cool.
And I want everybody to be safe, to do things legally, protect yourself. But hey, sometimes you've got to get that little gray to kind of get that push out there.
Yeah, definitely.
So now we're going to move on to Missouri, another one that currently is allowing medical use. And Amendment 3 would legalize the possession, delivery, manufacturing, and sale for personal use for, again, those over 21. But it is going to impose a 6% tax on commercial sales to fund various community programs.
What programs? I like to know those programs. They make it sound good when they say that. They just mention, just so happen, programs. So, the biggest thing is the disclosure on that, and that program being transparent to the public. That one I don't buy until I see it.
No, but I do like the fact that they are looking at legalizing not just the possession, but also the delivery. I do like that because then if you've got elderly people who need it, it can be brought to their house. So they're allowed to continue to get their medicinal use to help themselves without having to figure out ways to do it. So I like that, because I'm sure you've seen that in Toronto or Montreal one, they're allowing now Uber to deliver to the house with it.
Yeah, that was a big step moving forward. Canada is definitely their regulations and then how they view the plants totally different than how they view it right here in the States.
Right, because again, also Missouri is going to do the whole entire petition for release, parole, probation, and have their records expunged. So they're doing that as well, but
Mm-hmm.
they're saying it's unclear how they will respond currently as a voter. So it sounds like there's a lot of division still on yes or no in that state.
Yeah. I if I'm not mistaken, part of Missouri, I think the issue was going from Kansas into Missouri. I think Kansas is one of those states, or it might be vice versa, but crossing that state line is definitely a major, major issue when it comes to possession of cannabis or the proceeds from that cannot cross those state lines. So
Right.
I think it's Missouri that's making the amendment so that it is legal there.
I think so, because Missouri law enforcement leaders recently released a statement urging voters to vote no to Amendment 3, claiming the decriminalization measure would create dangerous situations such as driving under the influence.
Okay. So then, yeah, it was the state of Missouri that was prosecuting um, and holding the monies from legal cannabis businesses in, I think it was Kansas City, Missouri. Or was it Kansas City, Kansas?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Yeah.
That's something we'll have to look into.
Yeah, we have to look into that. But that is definitely a vote in the right direction to legalize it. It would help for the businesses that sell cannabis or THC, not THC, but CBD related products. They should not be prosecuted at all or penalized for operating a legal business.
Well, and also, I don't believe that your law enforcement leaders should come out and urge people to vote no on it, because you've already got alcohol being sold in the state. And if we can find the numbers, I promise you that alcohol-related deaths and injuries are going to be higher than anything to do with the cannabis.
Well, this goes back to those myths. It's the leadership all has I don't want to call it an agenda, but they view and see cannabis one way. So when you talk about what we were talking about on the show last week, law enforcement themselves can stand down. And when I say stand down, fall back, stand down, and allow people to safely consume cannabis. If they want to write them a ticket for having a certain amount, then fine. But to criminalize them and to put them in jail for petty possession, I hate to say petty, but I mean small possession, very minute, less than an ounce, less than 3 ounces. Come on, like that one right to me is wrong. It's wrong, especially when there's a therapeutic use and a medicinal use for it. In many states, not just a handful, many. We talking about close to 24 states where it is legal to have it or possess it medically. So come on, we got to get everybody on the same page.
Right. We got to get better. We got to do better together.
Yes.
Now, for example, North Dakota, they're wanting to legalize the recreational use and possession again for those over 21.
Okay.
And under the provision, they can grow up to 3 plants in their private residence for the production.
Okay.
It'll include a provision that would require North Dakota Department of Health and Human Service to establish guidelines on the recreational use and regulate how it's sold. For example, the department would be required to create a label standard listing THC and CBD amounts in the products, as well as establish licensing procedures for the medical businesses, which I agree with it. We should have a listing of how much THC and CBD is in there. Like we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I had an issue where I was going from taking a CBD-based gummy at 15 milligrams to buying a different one at the store, and all of a sudden it jumped up to 50. Yes, it was labeled on there, but I again didn't do my due diligence. I took the word of the person who didn't give me an explanation, and that was a big jump.
Yeah, yeah, and I am for regulations in that area even more, because I definitely would love to safely consume. I don't want to find myself in the state of cannabis intoxication. It varies from one person to the next how tough it is, and I know for my body, being new to consumption of CBD related products, too much um, can cause you to go beyond what your body can actually really handle, and now you're subjected to the psychoremic properties of THC, because you've dosed so much that now your body can't really handle it. So the exposure should be done incrementally. It should definitely be done in phases. I hate to use that term incremental, but it's really true. And for people to safely consume it, you have to definitely do it in moderation, and it has to be in small consumption.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's alcohol's the same way. People with caffeine. Some people can drink more caffeine than those who aren't used to it. So you're still having the same concept across the board in other products that we consider and are completely legal.
Yeah, yeah. Caffeine gives some people jitters, and
Right.
like I say, the final result is that vary from one person to the next. So the side effects
Right.
are things that we have to look at, and I think that in some trial basis, the safe dosing of it should be totally regulated. I do totally believe in that. To keep the public at large safe, we want everyone safe. We want everybody to safely consume as well. So we definitely need more research, and we need to understand how it all works, and how it should work.
Now, a side note on what happened in North Dakota is a very similar measure was brought up in 2018 and it was voted no.
What's that?
This same measure that they're voting on again this year in North Dakota, it
Okay.
was brought up in 2018 and it was rejected. It was actually taken off after failing. So they're trying again 4 years later and hoping that this time it'll be a little bit different. But the difference is this time it doesn't include expungement provisions because no longer making it just the smell of it be suspicion enough for possession and cause,
Okay.
which it was under the previous.
Okay.
So now you've got South Dakota, their neighbor to the south. And the residents of South Dakota have voted in favor of recreational in the past. In 2020, the voters approved Amendment A, which would have legalized recreational use. But the state Supreme Court ruled it violated the amendment laws and struck it down. So now South Dakota has a chance to do it once again.
And one of my comments about South Dakota is look at the demographics.
Yeah.
And really look at what's going on. And we also we might as well include North Dakota in there as well when you look at the demographics and the challenges because of different demographics. There are no challenges there, and this will pass. It will go through as it should, and it will be added to the list of states where it's fully legal across the board.
Now, one side note on North Dakota that's interesting, and you understand this is the people who do voting also. You're registered to vote in your state, your town. But a high percentage, and I don't have it in front of me, but North Dakota, for example, with all the oil fields, I would say it's probably fair to say that 70% of the people that are up there are there for work and are not registered to vote in that area. So those are the people who are probably going to really want to make this pass because North Dakota is a very, very, very vacant town, and there's not much to do there, and it has a very high opiate problem right now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree on that, and I definitely when we look at that state in particular, we want to look at the governor in that state because that governor also agrees and condones the use of the plant.
Right, and that's one of the things that's a little different with South Dakota is Again, it's 21 and up, like it should be, but the individuals will be legally allowed to possess up to 1 ounce, and those who don't live near a licensed store will be permitted to grow up to 3 plants in their own homes. The medical end has been legal in South Dakota since 2020.
Yeah. Big shout outs to the governor there. Do you know the governor?
No, I don't. I'd have to look that one up. I'm not sure right now.
Yeah. His values are spot on for the industry.
I'm seeing right here that it is Christine. I might say the name wrong. Last name Noem, Noem. Been there since 2011.
Christine or Chris?
Yes, Christina. Let me look it up again. I believe it's Christina.
Okay.
Yes, Christy. Sorry, Kristi.
Okay. Yeah, they have legal status is mixed for the state of South Dakota, and as far as medicinal, yes, medicinal is allowed in South Dakota, and in regards to CBD, it is it's a no. There's no decrim available.
Okay. Yeah, that is correct. I see that.
Yeah, so we definitely gotta take a look at that. And one of the good things that we need to add to the show is the legal component. If there's any lawyers out there that really know the cannabis business itself and can provide us gainful insight on what we need to do, we definitely would love you to be a part. What's up, man?
What's the deal?
Hey, man, we got this cannabis podcast going on, man. Just talking about the elections and what's going on.
Are you live?
Yeah, we live, man. You're part of the show.
What's good?
Yeah, man.
Yes. Boy at the farm, man.
Hey, we gonna have a cannabis burn session. Yeah, we'll announce that. We'll definitely announce that in the time to come. We'll put up our promotions and set our date for it. So, all right, everybody, we definitely got a big property that we can do something and do it privately on private property and safe.
Absolutely.
So for sure, we'll definitely be able to do that.
Yep. And I just pulled this up, the timeline of the cannabis policy reform in South Dakota. In 2019, you had them have enough signatures to be brought up on the ballot as Measure 26, which they did. South Dakota makes history by becoming the first state to pass adult use medical cannabis legislation measures in the same election.
Okay.
2021, they defend it. So that's when the governor stood up for it, and taxpayer lawsuits overturns the amendment. But here we go again. Leaders are launching another campaign on it, and that started this past May, I believe it was, on Measure 27, and now that's what they're doing in this current election cycle.
Okay. Yeah, in the picture right there in the article, it talks about Secretary of State Steve Barnett and Deputy Director Matthew Schweich. They got over 53,000 signatures, which is pretty tremendous. Considering the state's population, man, that's about 10%.
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah, so now that's definitely tremendous. So shout out and salutes to them as they make the push, and they got it back on the ballot there. So it may pass this year. I hope so.
Yep. Just under 900,000 was the population of South Dakota in 2021.
900,000, so 53% is about 1%.
Yep. And right now, recreational marijuana is already legal in 19 states. And legalization proposal are on the ballot, like we said, of these other 5.
Okay.
So, we've got the list there. And of course, guess what? As we know, recreational, of all the states I'm looking at, I don't see Georgia on there. I don't see Florida on there. Alabama, no. North or South Carolina, Tennessee, not either. So literally, to Georgia, Virginia is the closest state that has it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list of the fully legal. Most of that stuff is the Midwest, the northern
Midwest, West, and Northeast.
Yeah.
So we can see a very strong evidence in what they've always considered the Bible Belt as still keeping it from legalization.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just based off of the values that people are raised off of. And as I said, we still got to continue to talk about this here and spread the word so that way we can change the outlook on it. Because the outlook right now is still negative, it's still tarnished, and it's still being perpetuated in politics and in law enforcement. So those are areas that as we go to events like BizCon, as we go to try to produce the same events like BizCon here in Georgia. Right now, I wouldn't say that we would be able to safely do it on a large scale like that. The state itself needs a lot of changes, and it needs to adopt a overview committee to look into how things can be changed and how things can be safely done in this state. And just looking at the law itself, I want to go into view the state laws for Georgia.
Right. Just in the last couple of years, Sunday alcohol sales outside of a restaurant were just finally allotted here in the state, but they've been allotted in other states for years. So that right there, those who aren't familiar with Georgia, that gives you an idea of just how behind we've been on several things.
Oh, yeah. Now, and the thing about it is that the sessions earlier this year dealing with the Georgia Senate and the Georgia House, it stalled on the licensing process. As they made the jump to go on to legalize and allow CBD oil, the licensing process, it stalled, and lawsuits were filed. And it's just because they only allowed so many companies to be a part of the process. I think it was 5. And the thing about it is that's not fair. It's not fair. It's not equitable. It's a situation where if you got deep pockets, you can get into the game and you can actually do it. But it's not something that is fair. It's not a fair standard. But at the same time, it does. I do agree and feel that it requires a tremendous amount of regulation, so that way that it can be safely consumed, and then it can be restricted from getting into the hands of kids and teenagers. So that way, as I said, from one person to the next, their minds and their bodies vary on what it can take and what it can do, what it can endure. So those are the things we definitely have to make sure that we keep people aware of, that there has to be a standard for safe consumption.
Right. 2/3 of all Georgians believe cannabis possession should be legal. However, currently, first offense possession for an ounce or less of cannabis carries a maximum penalty of up to a year in prison.
Yeah, that's excessive. Totally excessive, totally uncalled for. Just even the cost to incarcerate somebody for something that's nonviolent is absurd. Should not be happening. Should not be a part of society itself. But once again, it falls into that category of a taboo, and those taboos can cause you a trip.
Yep, 40,000 Georgians a year are arrested for the possession.
Yeah, far too many. Far too many.
And of course, like we've discussed multiple times, the ACLU shows a staggering inequality in enforcement of the laws. Blacks and whites use nearly the same amount, is what they're trying to state, but the black Georgians are 3 times more likely than whites to be arrested for the possession.
Absolutely. And that's a shame. That just goes to how they use the laws in the legislature to really set us back. And those are part of the crimes that are being committed against us. They write these laws unfairly, unjustly, but then they will license companies to sell. They'll license them to sell, but individuals who sell, you're going to prison.
Right.
You're going to jail. You're going to jail for a long time, and the taxpayers are going to pay the price for it. And they privatize the entire market. So I mean, it's totally unfair, totally unjust, totally unwarranted, and we have to have more leadership in place, and we have to definitely find and appoint that one leader.
Right, because Kemp, for example, in 2019, he did sign the Georgia Hope Act, HB 324, into law, which allows patients to safely access low THC medical cannabis oils that has up to 5% THC in it. Again, that's a step, but is that actually doing enough help to these patients?
I know. And then on top of that, you're giving them the 5%, but then 0.03% is the legal limit.
Right.
So you're still putting them in foul territory, and that's wrong.
Exactly. Because the Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission accepted applications for procedures late in 2020, but yet have still not issued those 6 licenses to be available.
Yeah, that was because of the lawsuits. The lawsuits itself shut down the whole thing. So now everything's in peril. 3 years. So we're talking about it's 2022. It may start to work itself out late 2024, 25 at the end of the next election period.
Right, exactly. Because even here, for example, it's talking about the act and that they've got 20,000 patients who are signed up for the programs, but the licensing, of course, like we said, is not there yet. It's been bogged down with legal challenges and has yet to be resolved. Now they're saying sales are unlikely to start before mid-2023.
Well, what we have to do now is we got to get the rightmost candidate in. Right now, that race is going down to Warnock, Herschel Walker. That's for the state of Georgia. And then for governor, we have Kemp, Stacey Abrams. And right now, Stacey is coming around. Her stance is very and a little different than her initial campaign. She definitely would deserve some support. When it comes down to Kemp, I voted Republican in the last election. I did not vote Republican in this election. And you got to think that for some of the things that Kemp conveyed in his first election campaign, he had a 4-year term. He had a 4-year term, and he did not deliver across the board. I do agree with what he did to get us out of COVID. Those are things that I can say that I do support, and I see his weight on that. But then there's too much contrarian information, and then there's a little mix-up with the voter and the voter registration. Some of the things that I felt that he did that did not give everyone a fair and equitable chance to actually vote. So I do have some concerns with that, and I'm gonna hold him to that because he did that. So that under that circumstance, I voted contrary, and that is what I see. Not necessarily what I believe, but it's what you can see, what's been done. That's what it is.
Well, and you've got to, like they always say, look with your eyes and see what is happening, but what is being spoken, and is it being held to that? Right. So we talked with Shane last week, and he brought up some great points on that. And there are some things that the governor can do, and there's some that he can't. And Shane really tried to break that down for us to show that. Because, for example, you've got Stacey who's come out and said what she has said about the cannabis, and she'll do everything she can to make it legal. Kemp didn't deny or support it. He just said he's keeping his promise about gang-related activities, and that's as far as he would go with it.
All of that is not all gang-related, though.
Correct.
And what he's doing is he's categorized it and made it negative, and that's not fair for the industry itself. There are reputable businessmen, businesswomen that represent the industry, and they're not gang related. So it's not fair to literally write that and put that marking on there, so that way it puts it in a derogatory context. It's not fair. It's not right.
Well, we could literally spend the rest of this show with you going down a list of people you know who are athletes, artists, who have great reputations that are tied in with this business, not just here in Georgia, but across the nation. So they are out there. You're just showing a minority, a small percent.
Yeah.
And speaking of that percent, that 5% cap on THC does not meet the MPP's definition of effective medical cannabis.
Really?
So with us using the 5% in Georgia, we're not giving them the medical relief that they need by what they're considering effective.
And were you reading that at, Nate?
Down on the page where it talks about Georgia legislation underneath the marijuana legality by state, you go into Georgia, click on view state laws, you scroll down to the bottom of it, and it says, while it's important progress, work remains to be done in future legislative sessions to improve the law. Given 5% THC cap does not meet MPP's definition.
Gotcha.
So that right there was the question we brought up a little while ago. Yes, you're allowing something, but are you actually allowing us to be effective in what we're trying to do?
Well, this goes back to the polls and how true these numbers are. They talk about what percentage of Georgia agrees to decriminate, which is the majority, 70%. So this is my thing with that. If that is true, what's the holdup?
Right. Colorado, for example, has signed the bill to include home delivery and cannabis cafes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the home delivery, like we've stated, is very, very important, especially for at least focusing on those with the medical end. They can get what they need in their home. How many of these patients might be in nursing homes, special facilities, living with a caretaker? They need access, and being able to bring it home to them is phenomenal.
I absolutely agree with you on that, Nate. Our seniors and our elderly who 9 times out of 10 has endured some form of chronic pain, whether it's arthritis, tendonitis, bursitis, back pain, carpal tunnel, rotator cuff. Those nagging injuries or concerns, those are things that people need relief for. So I do see in our seniors that they need it more than anybody else, and that's more the reason to get that passed on the ballot.
Mm-hmm. You know, for example, all these states that we've gone through, in terms of medicinal, you have 7 states, 7 that are CBD oil only.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we are giving an opportunity to try to get medicinal usage, we're still limiting greatly what they can use and how they can use it.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword, Nate.
No, absolutely.
You're getting cut on both sides,
right?
And it's definitely not fair for that. But once again, we have to continue the conversation. We have to have people either add to the conversation, ask questions about the conversation, ask your local politician to answer those questions,
and follow up with them.
Follow up with them, and address and answer any concern that they may have. So that is true, and that's what we have to build on.
Because right now, Wyoming, South Carolina, North Carolina, Nebraska, Kansas, Idaho, all of those states have no medicinal setup whatsoever at this current time.
Wow. There's a lot of work to be done.
A lot of work to be done. And, you know, again, we, of course, definitely focus on the medical law because how important it is. You are hurting your people in your state by not allowing them to use the resource to help make them better.
Absolutely.
We've seen the stats. We've seen how much it can help people. It's a plant that's natural. It's not mixed with all this other stuff that Big Pharma likes to do. We're not having the residuals or the, like we mentioned on that one ad, where this will help with this, but here are the possible side effects.
Right.
What is this? Sleepiness, hunger.
Yeah.
There's your side effects.
Yeah.
That's also known as a work day.
Right. Yeah, we gotta. I think the biggest thing that we'll be able to do, as we go to BizCon, and we're counting down to that time. Actually, 2 weeks from now, we'll be in BizCon, and what we plan on doing is connecting with everyone on every level in the industry, from banking to cultivation. We definitely want to do our part to get it out there, to get all the opportunities that are available out there. Those are the things that we definitely want to focus on. We definitely want to focus on law, legislature. We want to also focus on legal as well in those states. So for everyone that's consuming, still you take heed and be aware of the laws that can affect you when you consume. We want you to be safe. We don't want you to lose any equity. We don't want you to lose your home just because you were not aware. So you still have to be smart. You still have to be responsible when it comes down to the choices and decisions that need to be made to keep you safe, but also to treat whatever is affecting you on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And to your point on what you're stating on that, underneath this chart that we have, legal status, 26 of 50 are mixed legal status.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, there's still some if and ands, because, for example, Hawaii is a mixed legal status, but yet when you look at medicinal and decriminalization, they both have it. So there's still, even in an area that has medicinal and decrim, there is still a variance of the law. It's not fully legal. So you have to make sure that you know what is what.
Right.
Idaho, for example, it's fully illegal, both in medicinal and in the decrim. So you've got to be careful. Check your laws. Just because they say it's legal here doesn't mean it's 100% legal, even if it's quoted as fully legal.
Right.
So you got to be careful. You got to do your due diligence. You got to study it. Just like we're saying, you got to study your candidates. Who is going to do the resource to help make this available in your state, in your city, in your town?
Right. Well, we definitely want to build on that, and we want to make sure that we let everyone know what to do, how to do, and when to do. We'll continue to keep them informed, and we'll continue to do this podcast so that way that people can know and will do. And we will have the visitors on as we move forward.
Absolutely, because somebody brought something very, very vital to my attention a couple of years ago, and I agree with them. When it comes to, for example, nationally and the president, we all have that focus. We all have that attention. The change happens local.
Yes.
And if we will, as a nation, look at local, our towns, our cities, our states, make a change there, that's where we can make the change with an example of this federal.
Absolutely. We want to start in a small pond, and we want to be able to control that pond. That's the community that we live in. And we can start by making change and providing events, things that will inform people, so that way we'll be able to do that. So we will and we shall start that. We have a new location, which I'm excited to show and talk about. And we will scale up our first official burn sesh at that location. And then in addition to that, we will produce a small cannabis festival at that location as well. So we're making steps and gaining grounds on the things that we need to do to be a better organization, to produce not only the safe events, but also to inform everyone at large who is involved, who may have in interest. And what we want to do is we want them to be the leader of that interest, and take it as far as they can possibly take it. And we'll join in with them as well because we have the same belief.
No, absolutely. And we encourage everybody to go out there. If you haven't voted, vote, do your research, dig into it. Again, on our Twitter page, on our foundation page, we're putting news stories up every day.
Yeah.
If you know someone that is beneficial in this business, reach out to us. We'd love to have them educate us as we educate you.
Absolutely. We just want people to discuss it. As we make the discussion a part of normal everyday life, that discussion will take it into the next day. That's all we got to do, one day at a time.
Absolutely. Well, real quick, reach out to us, but also give them that information of where they can connect with you.
Follow me, check me out at Big Boy Sam. Definitely follow Matcha Foundation as we continue to go places that we have not in the discussion. So please join us. Please support us. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for going back and watch. Thank you for passing the word.
Absolutely. And myself, you can reach out to me at DJNQ75 on Twitter and on Instagram. And we not only have these videos available on our YouTube channel, but also on the Matcha Foundation page here on Facebook. So you can always share that with other individuals. Keep this going, keep the education going. Invite somebody to join us next week. This is how we're doing our grassroots to try to expand it and make it available for everybody.
Absolutely.
So with that, we hope you guys all have a wonderful week, and we look forward to next Wednesday. And definitely look us up for BizCon because we're going to be showing a lot of pictures, a lot of different little broadcasts, and hopefully a lot of special events and ideas for you.
Absolutely. We'll put up a schedule for next week, and then if anybody want to join us out there, please send us a message or DM us on our IG page, Matcha Foundation. Until then, everybody have a great day.
All right.